Hi, Jen.
Hello, Miss Liz. Oh,
How are you?
pretty good. How you doing, girl?
Good.
Yo, pregos and stuff.
Yeah, look at my shirts working overtime. Oh, you can't see
Yeah.
them. I think this little thing at the bottom, like a lot of my shirts are doing. And sweatpants are all that fits me right now, so
Totally.
yep.
Good for you, girl. Good for you. So excited. When is your due date again?
December 6th.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's coming right up.
Yep.
Gonna be so fun.
Oh my God, this is my sister-in-law.
Hey, I've been wanting to call you, actually. I'm going to do that. I want to bring you some rolls since Michelle said we're not doing Thanksgiving. I'm like, I'm at least bringing Liz and Chris some rolls.
Yay,
And
that's so
some
funny. I was
raspberry
actually
butter.
just I was gonna text you today and be like, can I get your roll recipe? But I know they're
totally
like
will give
really
you the rest.
hard, so I was like, I don't know if I really would actually make them. So
Well, it is kind of like, it takes a couple of times. It really, like, just the dough, knowing how to handle that type of dough it just takes years of experience to perfect, which I
yeah,
am not there yet.
that's what I was worried about. I remember when Jordan made them the first time, he did a pretty dang good
That's
job.
true. He did. Yeah. I remember he called me and was like, yeah, I let him raise in the fridge. And I was like, oh, I've never done that before, but like it worked and great, you know? I think the trick just is like knowing how sticky to have the dough. Like, because if you put too much flour in, like, in fact, the recipe itself says 6 cups of flour, may need more. Where
Yeah,
I
I
always
have
need a
no
little bit
idea.
more.
Like I've never
Yeah.
baked anything like that. So
Well, one of these days we'll get together, we'll have a girl sesh, do some baking.
yes.
Anyways, it's too funny. I'm like, oh, that's right. We're not the only in here, but I feel like it's a private conversation. Anyways,
Yeah, it's fine. Jen's
it's all
cool.
good.
Don't worry.
Hey, Jen. But yes, I will bring you some rolls soon.
So Jen gave me my first ever open house at KW.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. That is way
I was
cool.
like, I need an open house. And she walked up to me afterwards and she's like, will you do my open house? I was like, you're so pretty. Yes, I would love to. Where is
I will
it?
do what? Yeah, wherever, whenever I'm on board. That's awesome.
I
Well,
just
I'm
had an
actually.
appraisal come in 100 grand low, so that's fun.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? What was the price point to begin with?
850 and it came in at 750.
Okay.
I
Ugh.
didn't really expect it to come in low, honestly. I expected maybe like 20 grand if anything, but it's one of those houses that had so many extra features that I was like, nah, it'll be fine. And it's kind of like in this weird spot in Lehigh where it's like you're gonna get stuff from Highland and Alpine that I was like, yeah, they'll pull enough stuff from outside that it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But
It's actually where I'm driving right now. I'm heading out to get listing photos of my place that's going live this week in Cedar Hills, which I actually wanted to talk to you about that. So I'll be super quick. I'm going to do a landing page and I'm actually going to put in my public remarks to like call me today for a private showing. I planned on sending those leads your way, but wanted to ask if you want them.
no, probably not. Oh, Cameron's in my office.
Yep.
I'm like, wait, why does he have those pictures?
Oh, anyway, sorry. We can chat later.
Yeah, we'll chat after. I'm gonna use the restroom really quick before we get started.
Cases.
Hi, Cameron.
Hey,
It's Erica.
Hey, Erica.
Good. How are you today?
Awesome.
I'm just letting you know I'm on my way to, like, I'm just on the road, so I'm going to stay muted for most of this because then I also am meeting some photographers at a listing. So love to hop on, but I'll stay quiet so I'm not distracting.
Got it. Sounds good. Jen, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Cameron.
How you doing?
How are you?
Awesome. How are you?
Good. Let me start a video here now that I'm in front of my desk. Hi.
Nice.
How's it going?
Great. You?
Very good. Very good.
So let me ask a couple of questions. So Erica, you're kind of muted. Are you going to be able to engage with us at all today?
I'll be listening for the most part.
Listening. Okay, but you're not going to be able
But
to.
I can certainly chime in. It kind of just depends on when, because I'm trying to talk my tenants off of their emotional ledge. So.
Yeah, I get it. Annie, can you hear us? Hello, Annie, you there? Or are you just listening to us? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to have is we're going to have a conversation revolving around hiring your first assistant. And the reason why I was asking if Erica, if you can engage, or Jen, is really the best part about when you get into a training or things is I'd like to learn a little bit about just where you people are, where the agents are, so that I know that what I can speak to. If we're in a group of people that are just be brand new, we're going to focus the conversation a little bit more around why hire an assistant and some of your first steps. If there are people that are doing a lot of business, then we would be talking about when do you hire and compensation and tasks and some of those kinds of things. So Jen, you're available right now. Give us a quick split. I mean, obviously you came to this class for a reason. Tell us a little bit about where you are in your journey and where you are in looking to hire, when you think you might hire, what your interest is in hiring.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm kind of cruising, and I have been for a while.
What does cruising mean? Does that mean everything is easy and doing lots of business, or?
It means I'm not working that hard. And I'm pretty happy with my production. I still feel fairly, when I get at my busiest, I feel a little bit overwhelmed. I would like to, I do use a transaction coordinator. I pay somebody to help me with marketing. But I would like to kind of focus more on my business and be more efficient. And I would like to work the same or less and make significantly more money.
Okay.
So, and oh my God, Liz, that looks delicious. I'm starving. So please continue that, because that's.
Don't mind Liz. She's
I've
just
been wanting one for like 3 days.
Do whatever she wants.
I'm getting
Annie's
one.
eating also. I'm going to the kitchen, get a snack right now too.
I had the camera off because I'm eating, and then I'm like, I'm gonna eat.
So to answer your question, I'm wondering at what point it makes sense to hire a full-time admin versus outsourcing individual tasks like transaction coordinating and marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that. Erica, are you in a position where you can share us a little bit about where you are in this path and what your future goals are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am just finding that business is picking up, and similar to Jen, I just find that oftentimes I'm just a little overwhelmed with the tasks, and so interested in just the process, or ideas for either a part-time or a full-time assistant, and just thinking through what that looks like and how to incorporate it.
Okay, sounds good. What level of business are you doing right now, Erica, as far as how many deals a year, or would you average, you say you're on?
Well, like previous to Keller Williams, like 3, and this year I'll probably do 7 or 8. And so, but I'm just also trying to learn all of our systems, command, all of that fun stuff. So just kind of trying to dive into everything at once.
Okay, awesome.
It's been awesome.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Jen, where are you at right now, production-wise, and where are you wanting to kind of end up, do you think, the end of the year?
Well, I think I'm about 15 deals total.
Okay.
Another couple will close before the end of the year. And for me, it's not as much about the number of transactions as the income.
Okay.
I think I'm in the 150 to 160 range, and I'd like to be in the 200 plus 200, 250 range for income. So again, trying to figure out how to maximize that, increasing my average purchase price, or average property home, and doing less of the tasks that aren't paying me well,
Okay.
but making sure that they're done.
Okay.
Like managing the database.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Thank you for sharing that. Annie, what about you? Give us a 30-second. Where are you? Where do you want to
go? So I just hired my first admin and realized that I didn't really have a lot of, I didn't do a lot of research about like, how should I do this? I was just like, you're amazing. That sounds great. I need time off. I need like a licensed human to show houses so I can like have 3 whole days of like camping without looking at my phone, because I feel completely swamped. Additionally, I have Corey doing stuff. What's that?
Did you hire your best friend or an in-law by chance?
I did not hire my best friend. I hired a client, and a client of mine who had never actually bought a house and then expressed interest in real estate. And okay. The whole time I was working with her and her wife, I was like, how can I make these people my friends? They're so cool. Like, I want to hang out with them. And so when she said she wanted to get a license, I was like, perfect. You can work for me and be my friend by default.
That was your qualification, was how can I make a friend out of this person? I'll hire her.
Well, she's very smart. She can be a very professional person. She's hardworking, and I saw those things in just working with her.
Okay, cool. Very good. Thank you. Mona, welcome to the call.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Yourself?
Good.
Mona, give us a 30-second version of your reason behind coming here. What are you wanting to accomplish or maybe get out of this class, and where are you wanting to end up production-wise for the year?
So I want to end up around, I think I'm at 15. So like, I want to sell 1 or 2 more by the end of the year, which I'm working on right now. And then I don't think I will be hiring an assistant for the next maybe 2 years or so, but I'm just curious on how to do it so that I'm prepared, so that when that time comes, I'm not extremely overwhelmed in how it's supposed to go. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking, instead of hiring an assistant, of hiring a marketing director. Just that's what I think, that's the biggest thing that I need. And I don't think I need an entire assistant just to handle my marketing. But I'm more curious on how it works, how it goes, just because I see a lot of assistants come and go, and I'm sure like that'll probably happen to me too, but I'm just curious on how to maybe avoid that and just kind of how it works, so I'm not
done. Just one and done, never have to hire again. It'd be
yes, yeah, that's a real thing, right?
Not usually, but thanks for sharing that. Tyler, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am here.
Okay. Now, give us a 30-second version of why you're here for the class today. What are you at production-wise, and what are you wanting to do future for goals with admin and so on?
I am honestly just here to listen and for information.
Okay, sounds good. Well, good to have you here. All right, so now that I have a little bit of a flavor of the group, here's what I'm going to start out by saying. First of all, we're all in different spots, and it looks like we're kind of in that beginning stage. So this is where it starts. I mean, this is how you begin to get into that mindset of hiring. I'm going to paint with some pretty broad strokes here with my paintbrush as to next steps and what you should be doing. So I think what I want to do is I want to focus on some things to be thinking about, not only for Mona when you're hiring your first assistant, but things you can do immediately right now to get yourself in a certain kind of a mindset. Another thing that I really want to stress right now is to make sure that you're doing it the right way. And there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about as far as doing it the right way. So This is going to be interactive. If I say something and you have a question, just stop me and let's pause and let's go over for a little bit so people they might have the same question you do. But let's go ahead and start by saying, why are we hiring an assistant? There are a couple of big reasons, right? First one is, you've already mentioned that it's gaining time back. It's getting more business. It's having a better experience for the client overall. And none of those have to be your absolute big why behind doing it. It can be, Jen, you said a little bit, I want to make more money and be doing things, but maybe you're not spending as much time. That's fantastic. Other people might say, well, I want to do a lot more business and I want to keep working as hard as I am. That's great for you as well. Very quickly, let me give you just a couple of minutes as to my journey. When I was not in Keller Williams, I was with a different brokerage, and we were using a transaction coordinator that the whole office basically shared. And my production was between about 40 and 50 deals. And I was doing that pretty routinely, but I was working incredibly long hours. I mean, all day Saturday. I didn't really have a whole lot of time by myself. And I knew, looking outside, that there were agents, and especially in Keller Williams, that were doing more business than I was. But I don't think they were harder workers. I don't think they were more talented. I didn't think they were better agents. And so that's one of the biggest things that got me attracted into the KW world, was to say, how are you guys doing as much as you're doing? And Boyd Brown was very instrumental in helping me get into Keller Williams. And as soon as I joined, that was kind of my first step, is to, how do I start building a team? How do I hire that first admin? And from there, my first year, I doubled my production. And I would say I continued to work a ton of hours. It didn't necessarily give me more time. It just changed what I was doing in the time that I had. So let me kind of now go off on a tangent. There are some really, really important things that you need to keep in mind if you're starting to look at hiring an assistant, if you're starting to bring in leverage, because what they say is that when you're in a place in your business where you feel like you can't do anymore and you're stuck, there are two solutions to that. It's either a system or a person that you need to get involved in that. Because you might be doing a little bit of business and maybe you don't need a whole admin. Maybe you just need a better system. Maybe you need to have a way of organizing your database. You have someone who comes in brand new in the business and they're keeping all of their files or paper files, and they're keeping written note cards for their database. And just by changing the system they use, they can save a lot of time, is one example of the system. But what we're talking about today is more of a person, that person that we're looking for. Now, we have to be very, very careful, because the natural tendency, and I'm already hearing this in what people are saying, the natural tendency is to get out of the model that KW has proposed. And I don't care if you're doing 5 deals and want to do 30, if you're doing 15 and you want to do 40. Within Keller Williams, we're known by our systems and our models. And one of the greatest models that we have within KW is what's called the organizational model, or the org chart. Now, who here can tell me what is the first hire in the org chart? And Liz can't answer. Somebody else.
I was going to say I can, but I bet you want somebody else to.
Yeah. Does anybody know? Okay, this is really,
I would guess a TC.
Okay, now thank you for sharing that. Why would you think a TC?
That just seems like step number one. I don't
know. brings and takes care of your paperwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what they call it is the first hire, coincidentally, is the admin, or the EA, the executive assistant. Now, what does an EA do? We have to be very, very careful and separate administrative roles or systems roles versus sales roles. Okay, they're two very, very different. And if you look at the org chart that they put together, the EA is basically doing everything administratively speaking, and you as the agent are doing everything sales related. Now, the reason they do that is because, generally speaking, if you're a good salesperson, you're good about those kinds of things: sales, relationships, closing, prospecting, those kinds of things. And generally speaking, an EA, or an administrative assistant, executive assistant, is good dealing with the administrative types of things. So your first hire, when they're talking about this, is an executive assistant. Most agents, when they start to get busy, they first want to bring on a buyer's agent. Now, why do you think that would be a mistake if you're bringing on a buyer's agent as your first hire?
Because who's going to manage the administrative stuff?
Exactly. Now you basically have two people, if they're good at what they're doing, are creating a bunch of mess and you have no one cleaning it up. So by definition, if you brought on a buyer's agent and you're trying to help them, you by definition become that EA as the person who is supposed to be running the team. So that's a mistake. And Mona, the other person that people bring on is somebody, I want to bring in more leads. I want more marketing done. And they say statistically that's a mistake, because what you're doing is you're putting somebody out there who's bringing in more leads and more deals to you, but then that's just making your life more busy, more complicated, and you're not improving, generally speaking, what the concept of is the customer service piece. So first and foremost, if I were in anyone's shoes right now, I would say don't think about bringing on leverage unless it's specifically an administrative type of a leverage. Now, what I want to round out though is when we start talking about, we're not going to necessarily delve into how do you find that person or the steps, because that in of itself, we could spend hours on. And Liz really wanted to make sure that we really emphasize the career visioning model. Is there anybody out there who has not heard of CV or doesn't know what that is? Okay, so I'll just basically summarize. The career visioning model is, or the system is a class that you can attend with Keller Williams. And I looked up online. I think they just did one that was online, and I haven't necessarily seen when their next one is, but they'll be coming out with the schedule. They typically would have them come here, but with the virus, they have them online, which is cool because it's a lot less expensive and you can do it whenever you can. But that is going to be where you're going to want to start the path of learning, how do I search? Where do I go? What qualifications I look for? Because one of the biggest mistakes, and Annie, I hope it works out for you and I hope everything goes through. However, most of the mistakes that people make is they say, I want to hire somebody. I like the person. I'm hiring out of pain. I'm hiring out of just chaos. And they really, really want to make sure that you in career visioning say, take a step back and you make sure you're hiring the right person. You want to hire the right person. There's an exercise that they take you through in career visioning that is, what is the cost of a bad hire? Now, just from your thoughts, what do you think it would cost you overall? And I'm not going to talk necessarily in what kind of costs I'm referring to, but what are some of the costs involved if you hire someone and it's the wrong person?
Time.
It costs you double your sales, I'm assuming, because it's.
Dang, welcome. Didn't see you there. Welcome, I didn't see you there. Good to have you. So Shane, what were you saying, Shane?
I was saying, like, it probably costs you double your sales because it's taking you out of sales, because you're trying to fulfill a training role.
Yeah, so sales is a big one. And what does that obviously equate to? Money, income, right? So if you're making $60,000, $70,000, that can take you away. And instead of saying, I'm going to spend all the time doing the sales activities, I mean, that can be an obvious quantifiable amount of, I did 15 deals last year. Now this year I've spent my entire time babysitting this person, putting out fires and dealing with drama and emotion. This year I did 7 deals. Well, that's 8 deals that I didn't do that I really ought to have done. And my average sales price is $8,000. So that just cost me $64,000. So income, lost time when you should be doing the other activities is huge. Annie, I don't know if it was you. I heard somebody else say something.
I said time.
Time. What do you think about time? Why is that?
So to piggyback off of, hopefully it won't be a mistake for me. There have been things that have come up that my assistant doesn't know how to do. And so it just takes her probably twice as long as it would if I had hired somebody who knew what they were doing. And for right now, I feel like that's fine. Because some of those things were just like, for instance, putting Google reviews on. She had never put a Google review on. So it took her like way longer than if I had hired some 16-year-old who was good with computers, but it's done now. So I feel like, well, if I paid more for it, it's fine because it's done now. It doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, time for sure has been evident.
So that can take you not only away from what Shane was saying, the sales piece, but that can also take you time away from family time on the weekends, time when you should be off, when you should be camping, because you're having to maybe babysit someone more than a little bit. So that's good. Anybody else can think of anything that's going to cost you if you hire the wrong person?
Your sanity.
Sanity. Liz, why would you say that?
Because when you hire the wrong person, and depending on your personality type, most of us probably have a pretty decent amount of eye in you. And so when you have that, you think, what did I do wrong? I screwed up their life. I spent so much of my own time. I screwed up my own life. I messed up with clients. You know what I mean? So I think you kind of hurt yourself too. You beat yourself up more than anything.
So you're burning a mental and emotional energy, and you're frying your brain a little bit because of what the toll is, right? Yeah, good. So there are so many other things that we go into. Just to keep it very brief, you also have reputation that it's costing you. If something gets screwed up with a client, you lose a client. I mean, I know there was an agent that everybody knows here that let an assistant go because it was costing him real deals. I mean, deals were falling apart because of things that weren't happening. And so that's potentially going to cost him relationships with clients. So there's the relationship currency as well. And if you go through this, I mean, it's staggering how expensive it is to hire somebody and not have that be the right person. Now, I want to caution you on two things there. Number one is, even if you go through this process that you would learn in career visioning, and I'm telling you, if you're serious about doing this, mandatory, you have to take career visioning. Gary Keller says you should take it 12 times. You should go through your education, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way through high school. You should take 12 times before you really start to begin to understand this process. I've taken it, I think, between what it's now and what it used to be called, I've probably taken it 6 or 7 times-ish. So I still feel like I'm learning every time I take it. Even if you go through that process, you're not guaranteed to succeed. They say if you don't go through that process, the percentage that you will hire and train and have success with that first person is about 20 to 40%. So your odds are not enormous that you're going to have something go right. However, even if you go through that whole process, they're saying that your odds are increased from maybe 20 to 40 to 60 to 80%. So it's not telling you, yeah, you're going to have a 100% chance. You're still going to have mistakes. You're still going to have those problems, but you're increasing your odds dramatically. And if you look at increasing your odds versus how much it could potentially cost you if you hire the wrong person, it's the best money that you're going to spend. And I'll just tell you, the last several assistants that I've had, I went through the whole process. I don't think I cheated the system. There were things that I went into it with each assistant that I knew were potential issues, but I was aware of those and we discussed them as a team and we felt good. But I remember my first assistant she moved out of state 1.5 years into it, and she was doing a really good job because of family dynamics. And then obviously there are other people that need to come through. And so even after going through 3, 4, 5 assistants, I still don't feel like I had hit that home run. I feel like we've done a much better job in the sense because we simply had to go through the numbers, go from person to person to person. I think we've hired the best one we've ever hired right now. And it's not that we did everything with the process, we just had to go through it. So I would say, and Josh Stern made a really, really good point when I first hired my assistant. And he said, think about, even if you screw it up totally, if you mess this up 100% and you bring someone on and they last 3 weeks and you get addicted to cocaine because of what they've done to you, no matter what you do, no matter how bad it goes, maybe it wouldn't be that bad, but no matter how bad it goes, you are still ahead of where you were when you first started. So don't be afraid to hire that assistant. Do the process as detailed as you can and know that it still could very well not work out, but you'll still be further along the path. You'll still be closer to where you're trying to get if you hadn't. Okay. And the other thing is, as I've mentioned on that, is just know that as you're going through this process, you will be so tempted to cut on the short. I mean, you'll try to shortcut the process every time. And one of the famous sayings within career visioning is that you will shortcut the process until it hurts badly enough that you won't. So I'll tell you that, you'll hear that, you'll say, okay, I won't shortcut it, but odds are you will, because a lot of the agents that I talk to have shortcutted the process, and that adds to more and more of the likelihood that it won't work out. Okay, comments, questions up to this point?
I've got one. What about virtual assistants? Particularly ones from like overseas.
Yeah, okay. Great question there, Jen. Let me go ahead and couch the answer to that in what I'm going to talk about now. So I'll answer that. Make sure you call me on it if you feel like I haven't answered that in the next 2 minutes. Anything else from anyone else? Annie?
This might get couched with her question, but are you about to go into what an executive assistant would do? I'm particularly curious if like they take on TC stuff or TC
Yes.
remains separate.
Yes, I will talk about that right as I'm going into this next thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. Anything else?
Oh. What about hiring somebody that's already had experience, I guess, in the TC role with other teams versus hiring somebody that's brand new and fresh, but kind of fits the role pretty much, but they don't have a license or any of that stuff?
Okay, good. So we covered a mouthful. We'll probably spend the rest of our time talking about all these things. The first thing that I can say, one of the best exercises that I'd recommend every one of you do, and it is a pain, it is tedious, and you're not going to like it, but it's one of the best things you can do for your business, is what's called a time and motion study. What you do in a situation like this is that you have either a piece of paper or you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet, and you put down, you break your entire day down in 15-minute increments. So I wake up in the morning, and when I get into work from 8 o'clock till 5, whenever it is, you're saying every 15 minutes, I'm going to mark and say what I did in the previous 15 minutes. Best way to do it is put a timer on your phone that goes off after 15 minutes, and timer goes off. Okay, I gotta stop. I gotta write down. I'm gonna take 20 seconds and write down what I did. I was looking at things on Facebook. I was setting up showings. I was doing lead gen, whatever the case may be. Now, if you're in an appointment, you don't have to stop the appointment and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Seller, I need to go ahead and write this. Just say after the appointment's done, the last hour and a half I spent in a listing appointment, or the last hour and a half I was showing. The more honest you are and the more detailed you are, the more this is going to help you. So what you want to do is you want to do it. People have a hard time doing it for a day. It's hard to do it for a week. I've actually done this for 30 days before, and you start to get used to it, but it's a pain. But what you want to do is this is going to give you such a high dose of reality that you're going to be shocked at how much time you wasted. And you're also needing to see, where are you spending your time? In conjunction with this, you also want to keep a notepad or someplace near you that you can write down what it is that you're doing. So kind of the detailed version of that time and motion study, saying, what are all of the tasks that I spend my day doing, right? So I'm setting up showings, I'm going on appointments, I'm sending out a newsletter, I'm designing a newsletter, all of these different things, because you have to become crystal clear as to what you're going to do during a day to be successful. It's going to be two benefits to this. First one is you're going to get real honest with yourself about, are you wasting time, and how much time are you actually working versus how much time do you think you're working. The other thing is that you want to start to create a list of things that you can leverage and give to somebody else. So what you would do is you would say, all right, I spent, and one of the great things is after you've gone through that time and motion study is you can start to color code it. And you can say, okay, here are administrative tasks right now, and here are sales tasks. I've already been told that I should not delegate, or I shouldn't leverage the the sales tasks. So I'm just going to be focusing more on my administrative tasks. That starts to become your job description of the things that you're going to start to train and teach and show that new person coming on how you can do it. Now, one of the things that is really cool about this whole business is that you might look at that and say, man, I've got 20 hours here that I could really use back in my life. And you say, okay, well, that's not a full-time person. That's not 40 hours. If we go to one of the big questions, which is, at what point do I hire an assistant? If you talk to the kind of the gurus within the industry, they say it's between, when you're doing about anywhere from 30 to 35 to 40 to 45 deals. If you're doing that many deals, they say that you're at that point, you're breaking down and you're not giving the client service, and you're spending more time doing things you shouldn't be than building your business. So I would really pay attention to that and say, if I'm not doing that kind of business, that doesn't mean you can't hire somebody. It's just saying, one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, am I being as productive as I really can? Because you might have somebody who comes in and says, man, I am just working my tail off. But then they look at this time and motion study and they say, man, I'm working 4 hours a day. I shouldn't hire an assistant. I should just wake up and start actually working more. And it comes down to, if that's important for you, great. And if you say, no, I only want to work 4 hours a day, this can still be helpful for you, but in my opinion, it's not that much harder. Like I told you before, when I first hired my first assistant, I didn't gain any more time back, but I was able to spend more time doing the things I should have, and my business doubled. So I wasn't spending more time. I was working just as hard. I'd say it was a little bit harder work because I was doing two things, but my income doubled and I wasn't spending more time than what I had been doing. And it's kind of the first step into that. So I'd be very, very clear to say, am I really at that point that I need to hire a full-time assistant? Now, even if you're not, there are still things that you can do, such as a really good idea is you could hire a part-time person. You could hire somebody who comes in and says, look, I just need you to set up showings for me. I just need you to go ahead and put the testimonials on, and I'm going to need you for maybe 10 hours a week. And it could be a college student, it could be somebody else. I've heard of agents also teaming up and saying, let's find somebody together. I'll give them 20 hours, you give them 20 hours, and we've got a full-time person. We'll have them right here in the office. I've heard people do that really, really successfully. The virtual assistant is an interesting concept, Jen, and I started getting into that, and that can be a really, really good way. But I will say you have to be careful in that regard for two reasons. One, there's a lot less cost involved if you're hiring overseas. And if you're going to do that, you should only really be doing that for tasks that are very repetitive, that are things that you can train them out and they don't have to even think about it. It's, hey, I need someone to go into my MLS and just input my listings. I need somebody to go ahead and schedule these showings, and they can do all that through showing time. Be very, very careful. It's not a bad idea, but just know that when you're not paying as much, you also have to have usually a little bit more oversight on the person, and you have to do tasks that are not going to be easily misunderstood. And then the other thing is I'm not a huge fan, at least as of right now, and I've heard of people doing this, but I haven't really been convinced that it's a good way, is that I personally wouldn't have a virtual assistant be doing a lot of interaction with my clients, because my opinion from what I've seen is that you're going to lose a little bit of that customer service. There's going to be some things lost in translation. And I personally think that some of the clients feel like you're really being pushed off on somebody else if they can't understand the dialect, or excuse me, if there's an accent that's really, really heavy, or if an email comes across and it's really poorly written. So it's not a bad thing to look at, especially if maybe you're only needing a couple of hours a week. I mean, that's a great thing to leverage off in it. Then they're very simple things. I need somebody to get these lists put together. I need somebody to be sending out messages on Facebook, just saying happy birthday to the person who is having a happy birthday. So it's not a bad idea, but I'd be very, very careful how you do that. Jen, does that make sense for you? Okay, Shane, remind me, what was your question, or what was your point?
Just basically hiring somebody that already has experience from another team, or if starting fresh is better.
So the answer is,
and then did you get lucky on your first hire? I mean, yeah, she only lasted 1.5 years, but it was a personal reasons, but it seemed like she filled the role pretty good, or not so good.
Okay, so yeah, let's think about that. Did I get lucky? No, I don't think I got lucky, because I really, really followed the process. I mean, I was very, very, very careful, and I used a lot of the tools that Keller Williams is so amazing. They have so many tools and classes and things, and I got my assistant plugged into all of those. Did I get lucky? I don't think so. I hired somebody, I went through the process, I didn't cheat it. And if you think about it, from what I was saying earlier, I doubled my production, and I brought somebody on. She was brand new. She'd never done anything in real estate. She was 21 years old, and she worked at Bath and Body, or whatever, one of those companies. So, Shane, to your question, I would say it doesn't matter. Be careful when you're hiring somebody, because you really, really want to look. They say to hire for culture, and basically for cultural, or you want to hire for culture, not necessarily for talent or for skills, because you can come in and you can train somebody on the skills, but you can't train somebody on the culture. For example, Annie, you said it took some time to teach this person how to do certain things that you could have hired a 16-year-old to do. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because once you've hired the person, it would be I would much rather have someone come in and say, doesn't know one thing about what I'm going to talk about, but is a hard worker, is honest, is a good cultural fit, pleasing personality, good on the phone. I would much rather hire that person than someone who comes in and says, I am the master of social media. You have to teach me one thing. I'll do everything for you. but then doesn't show up for 3 days.
Okay, good. That's exactly how I felt. I was like, I feel like this is a small price to pay for how great she is at like all the things you just listed. So
be very, very clear on this. Doesn't matter whom you hire, you will not hire someone who's going to be perfect in every regard. But realize when you're hiring that EA, there's a whole list of things, and this is why you go through that process, because you want to have the biggest chance of being successful in that role than not. So overall, that person is going to, they're going to be the TC, they're going to be the marketer, they're going to be the customer support, they're going to be everything on the administrative side of things. And that doesn't mean they're going to be a whiz. I've had some EAs that have come in and have been better at spreadsheets, for example, than others. So when I hired you learn this in CV, career vision, is that you're going to have certain non-negotiables. You're going to have certain things that you say, this person has to be able to do this kind of thing. And if not, I will not even hire. I'll not even look at you. That could be, for example, if someone has never had any experience using email, or if someone who has, I don't even know what Excel is. You might want to say to yourself, you don't have to be a master at this, but if I'm having to show you how to use email and what email is like and how to turn a computer on, that may be too much of a cost. But that doesn't mean that the assistant that we have right now, she's not an expert at social media. She doesn't even have a Facebook account. She's not an expert at Excel spreadsheet. And I was fine with that. And I knew that going into it. What I loved about her is that she did have experience in industry. And so I didn't have to train her a lot of those things. Having said that, though, my first assistant, I had to train her on everything. And if you hire somebody that doesn't have experience, it's going to take them probably 6 months to a year before you're really, really starting to feel like, okay, I don't have to teach this person anymore. But the important thing is that you can teach them those things. But that person has done deals in the past, they worked as a TC, but then comes in and is wasting time and is spending time on social media and doing those things, then it would not have been a bad hire. So Shane, I would say be open to both of those sides. Be open to someone who comes in and is just a killer, what they call potential talent, meaning they've never done any of these things, but man, this person, my first assistant she had a really good track record in the things that she had done. And she fit a behavioral profile that said that she has a good likelihood of being successful. And so I went with that. And I would say that was a very successful hire. It was a great hire. But I've hired people in the past that had great track record. They had good references. They had a great, what's called a KPA match, or supposedly, according to what Keller Williams said, they would have good talent, and were not good. And were wasting time and just personality-wise, not a great fit. So be open to all of those. Don't say I'm only going to look for somebody with experience, but don't discount that, because you're going to gain things from having somebody with talent or with experience. Don't totally discount somebody because they don't have experience, because you might find somebody that you'll say, man, in 3 to 6 months, this person has picked up and is doing it better than I have. Okay, does that make sense?
Can I speak to that for just a second? So it's also like, just kind of think of when you are dealing with a client that you personality wise don't like. You don't want to go show them the houses at a moment's notice. You don't want to negotiate the best deal for them. I mean, you do because it's your job, but it's just a lot more painful. And obviously I've been with Cameron through a lot of our hires that weren't such good cultural fits, but they were good at their jobs. And it's kind of icky sometimes when you're in a meeting. And I mean, a lot of these people you're hanging out with more than you're hanging out with your own family. And so when you just personality wise and culture wise, it's not a fit. Like Cameron said, it's better to deal with, oh, they made a mistake, let's fix this so they can move forward, rather than being like, oh, they made a mistake, but they're going to get so mad because I'm correcting them that I'll just fix it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point, Liz. One of the best pieces of advice that I didn't learn for several years was something that was told by one of the instructors, and that was, when you're sitting down with a person, you have to realize one of the greatest requirements for you to be in business with that person is you have to like him or her. I don't care what your track record is, how professional the person is. This person comes in and you're like a Liz Bear, and you're happy and smiling all the time. And you bring in this person is just not even reacting at all, and you have to check for a pulse. That person could be a very talented person, very good at what he or she does, but you're going to be spending as much time as you would with a family member. And so you have to be in that position. Now, you don't want to take that to the extreme and say, well, I will, because you hear this all the time. I just like the person so much. I met with her and we just clicked and we had so much in common. And we were two peas in a pod. And that can be a very, very poor reason to hire somebody. But if you don't have that, then that's also a very, very potentially bad hire as well. Annie, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I was wondering if when you're saying, like you as a human are saying, when I trained her or when I trained her, blah, 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 are you actually as like the team leader, as the leader person training these administration people, admin people?
At first, 100%. Yeah. And thank you for lumping me in as a human, but
barely. Just kidding.
Yeah. So when you bring that first person, you got to realize you're going to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. So when I say you're going to get more time back, at first you won't. At first, it's going to be a time suck. You're going to say, I just spent 2 hours showing somebody how to input something into the MLS when it takes me 30 minutes. So you do everything when you're starting out. You show, you train, you teach. You are the end all be all for that person and how to answer it. Now, what's a beautiful concept though, as you start to do that, and again, you'll learn this in CV, as you start to do that, one of the biggest roles that person will have is to start systematizing and documenting what you're teaching him or her. And let me give you an example. We sit down, Annie, and you're the assistant, and I take 2 hours explaining everything about putting something in the MLS. And I tell you at the very beginning, you're going to document this. You're going to write everything down. Maybe we're going to do screenshot video of it. You're going to do all of this. We're going to start to build this operations manual so that in 3 weeks, that person says, sorry, not a fit, or you say, sorry, not a fit, and they leave. You bring the next person on. Now, all of a sudden, you just duplicated yourself because the next person, now Shane's come in, and I say, Shane, first thing you're going to learn is you're going to learn how to put something in MLS. I want you to review all of these notes. There's step-by-step instructions, and there's a video on this. I want you to watch it, and I want you to see if you're going to understand everything that's involved in this. And if that works, then you just went from spending 2 hours to teaching somebody to no hours and just got that same experience. So there'll be a lot of those little things that you'll do. And then the other thing is, and I misspoke, Annie, when I said it was all me. It wasn't. We leveraged out a ton with the Market Center. So there are amazing classes that you can have with the Market Center. I have had my assistants talk to other assistants, and I've had other agents who assistants have talked to my assistants on training and showing how to do things. So when my first assistant came in, she went out and she spent the day just shadowing another assistant and was writing down and learning and kind of learning there. So I take that back. It's not necessarily me doing everything, but I'm overseeing to make sure all of these things are happening. But you have a lot of great leverage tools. There's a class that Monica Reynolds, and if you don't know who she is, Monica Reynolds is a lot of people consider to be the foremost authority on training, hiring and training, well, more like training assistants. And she has a whole course that I'm taking my current assistant through right now, and it's called The Perfect Assistant. And it's a 12-week course. In fact, it's either 12 or 18 weeks that you spend about $1,200 on. And she is teaching and talking to assistants that are brand new or that have been in business for as many years as you can imagine, and showing and teaching and helping that person. That's been a huge thing. I mean, just even though I've been doing it for 4 or 5, 6 years, this go around with our current assistant, I mean, I'm learning a ton, and we're doing a lot more with our systems than we have in the past. And that's great because I can have her listen to it and I listen to it. Then we just get together and say, hey, what do we learn? What do we need to do now? As opposed to me having to reinvent the wheel. So to answer your question, tons of leverage pieces, but you have to make sure that those leverage pieces are taking place.
And then are all or some or none of your assistants licensed?
I think I've hired, let's see, now I think about it, I think I've hired only one assistant that was licensed when she came, and she was only with us for a month. I think everyone else became licensed after they came to me.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't think any of them were licensed before.
Yeah. So each time, what I would do is in CV, they'll talk about what's called a 30-60-90. 30-60-90 is basically a way that I hired Liz as my assistant, and I say, Liz, you're hired. However, it's for 30 days at a time until we get to 90 days to make sure that this is going to be a fit for both of us. So even if you brought on an assistant, I don't necessarily know if I would say, okay, day one, you're going to start getting licensed. I personally would wait that 90 days to make sure that you feel like that person's going to be a good fit for your culture. The person's actually doing what you want. And this is an important piece. How do you know if someone's being successful or filling in that role? Well, that 30, 60, 90, you start to say, all right, in the first 30 days, there are certain things that you absolutely have to be able to master. You have to dominate these things within the first 30 days. We get to the end of those 30 days and you haven't done that, we're going to continue to work on that. And if you don't do that the next 30 days, it's probably not a good fit. We should probably part our ways. And that's a cool concept, because then you don't have to feel like you got to spend 6 months to a year potentially going through and failing and wasting all your time. You could be at most, maybe you're out 30 days and then you know it's not a fit and you go back and you find somebody else. So you're really mitigating the potential loss there and the damage it's done. But overall, you will start to notice that you'll start to see more production in your business. And one of the most important things I'll hammer home, if you get the right hire and you do it the right way, that person should be able to double your production. And that's exactly what happened to me. So that person should be able to pay for double to triple what you are paying him or her that first year. So it is the best investment that you can possibly make as an agent, whether it's a part-time person, a virtual assistant, as long as you do it right.
Do you have, sorry, I'm kind of dominating with questions here. Do you have any of your assistants sign non-competes or anything like that?
No, I don't really necessarily have non-competes per se. I mean, that goes to an overall kind of a team question. I would be very, very careful about hiring anybody that you would say, I'm having to worry about a non-compete kind of a thing. I mean, let me take a step back. Okay. Gary Keller, something I learned this year from my coach, Gary Keller, one of the first things that he does when he hires somebody, after he's hired them, is he sits down and says, okay, now that we've decided to get into business, Annie, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put together a divorce agreement, basically. We're going to say what happens if it doesn't work out. Now, for an assistant, it's a little bit different, but there are some things that are also the same. I mean, for example, you have to, and I had an agent tell me, just a very, very successful agent tell me this just a week ago. He made a mistake in not paying attention to what was happening with certain systems and whatnot. And so realize the gravity of what you're doing. When you hire an executive assistant, you are hiring your right arm. I mean, that person is going to know your clients as well, if not better than you. They're going to have access to personal information. They're going to have access to sensitive information. So that's why you got to be so careful when you hire that person. You're checking references and making sure there's never been any kind of impropriety with other business. I mean, you have to have someone. That's why I say culture is so important. Because you can hire somebody who is an all-star, but is dishonest, and that could screw your business up major. And I mean, I've heard of situations where assistants will take databases and will start marketing them. So I don't necessarily say non-compete, because it's kind of a hard thing to enforce, obviously, with an assistant. So if you're worrying about something like that, an assistant, then it's probably the wrong type of a thing. That goes a little bit more into the de-hiring process. I mean, that's why there's a saying, it's called check what you, or excuse me, inspect what you expect is what it is. You inspect what you expect. And that means that if you have an assignment out to an assistant, you got to follow up and make sure that person is doing it right. It'll be very, very hard to have an assistant go and do the role without saying, we're going to limit you in all the things that we're giving you access to. If you got to a point though, where, and I've had this before, and this is very uncomfortable, but it's necessary. If you ever get to a point where you're having to de-hire somebody, you have to be prepared and ready for worst case outcomes. And so first thing is that if you do the process right, if it doesn't work out, that person should know it before it's not going to be a walk in and, hey, Mona, I'm sorry, you're just not cutting it, you're fired. It will never be a conversation like that. Usually it's kind of, we're getting to the end of this. I've never fired an assistant and it was a complete surprise to him or her. I mean, it was always kind of yeah, that's pretty much what the direction we're heading in. And I've been blessed, I've been fortunate, I've never had anybody do anything retaliatory. And I've had good experience in the sense that we've always left on good terms for the most part. But I've had coaches that have said, look, if you think there's even a hint of something happening, of sabotage, then what you'd want to do is you'd want to be prepared for that. And you treat it like a lot of corporate companies fire somebody. So you basically say, all right, we're going to bring somebody in, we're going to tell them they're going to be releasing them. It shouldn't be any kind of a surprise. And ideally, if, and it sounds crazy, but if you're getting to that point, you're wanting it to be more of an ally. You're wanting it to be somebody who is actually still happy with you and likes you as a person. And so I've seen people that have said, hey, we're going to help you find a new position. This just hasn't worked out. I wish you all the best. And I'd like to try to find you a good reference. I'd like to help you connect with somebody. And if you're doing that, that's the best preventative measure. But occasionally you'll have somebody that's going to just go off the deep end. And that's where you have to say, all right, we're going to fire this person. But as soon as we do that, we're going to have somebody in place that's going to change our Facebook account, our CRM account, passwords, because I have heard of assistants going in, nothing locally, fortunately, but I've heard assistants going in and basically locking out agents from their Facebook and putting nasty things on there and basically taking their database and doing things with it. So you do have to put all of these measures in place just in case. But again, if you've done the process right, you can cut down on so much of that exposure, so much of that potential loss. So to answer your question, Annie?
Yeah, it did. And it probably stems from one of my biggest mentors in my life was way about having people sign things that they wouldn't steal anything in his processes. He kept very secret for a long time for fear that someone would steal the process. And he was like, not in real estate, but just really paranoid about it. And now as I'm sort of building a business and hiring an admin and having her help me create those processes, I'm like, I don't have any fear for her, but what if we bring someone who steals our processes? And then I have to go, who cares? Like that, then fine, they can go and use them. He was so protective, like that was his product to him. And so I was sort of like raised in that environment business wise. And so I'm like, maybe I should be like that. So I just wondered if
I'm not saying it doesn't have a place. It's just you have to count the cost and say, how much time am I going to spend policing this and upfront being so stringent on what I'm having them sign that, and then I'm going to have to go and sue them and go down that road. It's just so much better to spend the time making sure you hire the right person and making sure that time spent is good. And realize that at the end of the day, you might have that. I think for us as agents, our biggest concern is our database, and saying, hey, if that person steals my database or that person starts doing things, and if you're doing your job, you should be in contact with that database and you should be developing that relationship anyway, so it shouldn't matter as much. I could see that being a little bit more the case of, hey, here's our here's our recipe for Coke and you can't ever share this. Well, I mean, you can kind of track that down and say, hey, how'd you get this? Well, so-and-so did. I mean, I think it's a little bit different in a different industry, but for our industry, I think it has more to do with making sure you do the right thing up front, making sure that you are inspecting what you're expecting and making sure that if it doesn't work out, that it's a good transition. You cut down on so many of those things. And at the end of the day, you do have to realize that that's a risk that you're taking as a business owner. I mean, anybody that owns a business potentially has any kind of a loss because of what's happening with employees. And that's part of the risk. So okay, we're getting close on the end of time. Is there anything we have not gone over? Liz, is there anything else you want to add or anything else we want to talk about?
What do you typically do to check their culture, check their honesty? I mean, besides call references, I mean, what other signs do you look for in a person that's honest and not dishonest like Liz?
Like Liz is honest. So
we don't look for like my kind of honest.
This is honest. This is honest as they come. So it has so much to do with the reference checking. And I'll just give you the 60-second version of this. If I'm hiring Liz, I'm going to ask Liz to give me 3 names of people that she knows. She's going to give me a personal, professional, and an industry-related reference. I'm going to call those people. I'm going to ask specific questions around that. Has there ever been, and if I ever have a question about that or a concern, I'm going to say, has there ever been a time where Liz's integrity has come into play? And people will say, well, they're only going to give me names of people that are going to give me good references. Usually, but I haven't had this personally happen, but I've talked to a lot of agents who have, and they've said, I've called up Shane as a reference to Jen and said, hey, how did Jen do? And there was a big long pause. And there's been a I don't necessarily know if I would say something. This is all fictitious, Jen. I'm making this up. But when the cool thing is that you get permission to call and reach out to Shane to talk about Jen, but then you say also, Shane, who else do you know? And Shane gives me Erica's name and number. I call Erica, and Jen didn't know I was going to be calling Erica. And then Erica tells me something, and I say, Erica, great. Can you give me another name and a number? And I'm going to call Mona, and then Mona. So you go 3D, and that's going to cut down in a lot of that overall feel. So I would be, a lot of people don't do that. They shortchange that process, and then they don't find those little questions or little problems here or there. And then I would do, I mean, there's other simple things you can do. I get on people's Facebook page just to kind of see what kind of a person they are. It's unbelievable to me what people put on their Facebook, the pictures, their comments. You can start to get a good feel of who somebody is, and realize that when you're going through the CDA process, you're spending hours and hours. I spent 3 hours with a guy last night. We're talking our team. That was the second interview. I spent 2 hours with him the first time. And so I'm feeling like I'm getting a pretty good feel on this guy as to how he is and how he operates. And then I'm going to spend several more hours just talking to people that he knows. I'm going to ask some very, very pointed questions about him and see what their feels are. So you're not going to know 100%, but if you do that, you're going to cut down on a lot of mistakes that people have missed.
Yeah, I can't say that enough, is going 3 deep is so, so, so important, because it's not that first reference is ready for you. The second might be, the third, no idea. Like, your hire has no idea that you're going to talk to that third person. I think another thing that was a huge one when I was hiring my first assistant was having what do they call it when we had that meeting with Boyd? Like the defense.
Oh yeah.
And they find it's funny because you're in love, because I mean, at this point, especially if you're an I like me, like, you're in love with the person, you're ready to hire them. Yeah, and sure. The very last phase after they've met the team and everything, and you're about ready to give them an offer, is you have somebody from the outside come in and punch holes in all of the things that you love about this person. And you have to really think and go, holy crap, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. That what Liz is describing is a piece that you learn in career vision. It's critically important because it takes you out of you're hopefully saying objection, or basically saying third party at a distance, but you almost can't through the whole thing. You will eventually love that person and feel like you know that person and want that person to succeed. So it's paramount that you have other eyes and other ears to say, okay, well, did you ask this, or what about this? Was that not a concern, or this could be a big issue? So again, it goes back to, you have to follow the process. Okay, guys, anything else? So wrapping up. Okay, so I want 3 ahas from people to say, what are 3 action items or 3 things you took from this last hour together? Jane.
Well, the one that you just talked about recently about going 3 deep, that's pretty incredible. I never even heard of that before. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Take career visioning, Shane.
Yeah.
I think one of mine is just like you said, like, your first hire may not be like the most perfect one. I guess I've put it in my head that if you hire more than one assistant, like, you're failing at something. And I've just realized, like, that's definitely not the case because of how many successful agents there are who have assistants that come and go. So it's just that was definitely, I know it doesn't sound like a huge aha, but to me it was that I'm just going to have to learn as I go. And it's just like my drunk monkey, like, I'm like, I have to hire the perfect assistant. And if it's not, like, I'm failing. So that was definitely a big eye opener for me.
That's a great one, Mona. And just know you're failing forward when you do that. Like I said, I'm on assistant number, I think 5 or 6. Josh went through 4 or 5 assistants till he finally found the one that he felt like was the one who took him to that next level. And I don't know personally anybody who has hired one person and has been the best hire and the long-term hire ever. So I wouldn't say go into it saying, I'm gonna hire a bunch of people, so I'm gonna screw this up anyway. Do what you do, because you could very well hire that person that's going to be with you. But even that person's with you for a year and a half, it's still going to get you farther along. But no, there's a good chance that person's not going to be with you for a long term, and that's okay. You're getting more educated, you're gaining experience. So that's good. One more.
I'll hop in. One is at what point do I hire? And that's at around 30 or 40 deals, 30 or 45, I think you said. Mm-hmm. Until then, I might just work a little harder.
Heaven forbid.
Right. And then the time and motion study. I mean,
it's brutal,
seems
but
really-
it's really cool.
seems quite significant.
Yeah, Annie.
You'll curse my name until you finish it and realize what a gift it is, because it will open your eyes to a lot of things. Annie, you had something. They'll end on that.
Yeah, it's the time and motion study. Like, I know that, and especially since I've been working from home, like I still have an office over there, but I never go to it anymore. And working from home, I know that I waste an incredible amount of time a day. And so I'll be like, oh my God, I worked like 10 hours today. And I'm like, but did you? I'm like, well, I was like, I think what's hard for me is to say, okay, if I do work 4 hours in the whole day and I were to condense those hours, I feel like it's an impossible condensing of time, because people text and people email and you get a phone call and you got to run and meet a plumber and you got to like do all this stuff. I feel like I'm constantly working, but between those 15-minute increments, I'm definitely like not working.
Okay, so this has been great advice from my coach, is own the morning and everything else is going to be a scattered mess. And that's what Gary talks about, is to time block. Yeah. So don't allow those texts to come in to pull you off. Don't allow that, hey, I'm going to go run over here, meet this person here. Don't allow any of that until after 12. If you can have a perfect morning, so if you can say 4 hours of time block time, I did lead gen, I did followed up, I spent time building my business with those first 4 hours, and then the rest of the hour was just a crapshoot. Well, if you can do that, then you are technically winning the day.
That's really good.
That's something though, and that's why that time and motion study is so good, because you might look at that and say, holy smokes, I spent X amount of time returning texts, I spent this much time. You'll start being aware of that and realizing that, and you'll start to realize, look, I'm not going to touch anything until I have to, and then I'm going to spend this hour right here. I'm not going to do anything but return texts and messages. That's all I'm going to do. And in 5 minutes after I've finished that, if I get another call, I'm not going to do that until an hour after that. So there's different scheduling things that you can do to help. You check your email and your calls very, very first thing. You get those out of the way, and then you don't touch them until maybe noon, and then you don't touch them again until 5. Because if you haven't read the one thing, required reading for you, when you get pulled off on something and then come back to it, you are automatically expanding the amount of time it's taking you to do all of these things. So if you can condense it down and just focus on these things right now, this thing, and then this, and then this, and then this, you can get 4 hours worth of work done in 1 hour, or you can get 10 hours worth of work done in 6 hours. So it's those kinds of things. And that's why that time and motion study is so helpful, so insightful, because you're starting to become cognizant of those things that you didn't know before. So good, guys. I think we're done now. Appreciate your time. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to help. Liz, back to you.
You're the best, Cameron. I don't have anything.
Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Every week.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Shut up, Shane.